When we're talking about critical thinking as it applies to consuming information, there is one three-word question that will help you sift through. See what I did there? We talked about sift in the last lesson last week. The information and get closer to being able to identify what's accurate and what isn't. And that question is, what's the source? Now, if you ask this question too often, like I do, people will arrive at the logical and probably accurate conclusion that you're obnoxious. I am obnoxious. I irritate people all the time, starting with my wife. When I ask a question about a basic statement that someone has made, that she's made, that an observation she's made, or something she's seen on the internet, and that is, okay, what's the source? And there we go. On the other hand, if you don't want to be obnoxious, then just keep it to yourself. But when you are seeking information, ask yourself that question. Where did this come from? Not the website that you found it on. That's probably not going to be the actual source. Keep looking until you figure out where it came from. And then try to identify, does this source know what it's talking about? Is it a credible source? Is it scholarly? Is it credible? Is it a reliable source that you can actually trust? And there are various methods that you can go about pursuing to help you determine what's credible and what isn't. We talk about those in my other courses. This being a shorter course, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that other than to just, again, apply the skills we're talking about in this class to help you determine whether information comes from a good source. The other thing to ask yourself is whether you accept as truth something you hear or read or view or what have you will depend on whether any of the barriers that we've already talked about, barriers to critical thinking, are in play here. And you need to ask yourself, am I predisposed to want to believe this? Or does my background or my history or whatever, are there any barriers at play here? And so I want to just give you one example of how we might go about employing this process to help identify information that's factually accurate, which is a significant component of critical thinking. I'm sure that we've all heard that we are supposed to drink about a gallon of water a day to be fully hydrated, which is a whole lot of water. I might drink that much on a day when I'm playing tennis, particularly if it's warm. So during the process of playing tennis, I probably drink about a gallon of water and then some afterward. But I wanted to understand where this came from and what it means, this idea of drinking 8 glasses or 10 glasses or what have you. And so I started with just a basic search. And here's one thing to remember now when you're using Google or any other search engine is that Google and other search engines are now fully embedded with AI. And so it's going to start looking more and more like the summary answer you get is definitive. It's based on facts when it may or may not. And so if you see something that looks accurate or looks believable, you need to not stop there. You've got to click. Be careful about clicking. Don't click on something that's going to get you into some malware. But if you're curious, find one of the sources that sounds reliable and click on it and read it. Actually read it and see what it says. So I did that. And I went to a number of places that went into detail about this 1 gallon of water a day thing. And here's what I learned. So I went to Harvard Medical School. I went to McGill's University, which is the largest university in Canada. I went to the Mayo Clinic, and they all said essentially the same thing. Yes, hydration, fluids, that's important. We are made of water, and so making sure that we're consuming enough fluids is important. However, it doesn't have to be water, and it doesn't have to be consumed by drinking it. You get water from coffee. And no, coffee does not dehydrate you. Look it up. You get water from wine or soda or whatever. Now, some of these things have other ingredients in them that may or may not be helpful for you, but we're focused right now on consuming fluids. It does not mean that you should walk around with a gallon jug and make sure by the end of the day that it's empty. I actually read a story in the New York Times about an athlete who literally does that. He walks around with a gallon jug of water, regardless of what he's doing, interviews, whatever, to make sure he's getting his gallon. Well, he's misinterpreting what the science is. So a lot of fruit has water content. Obviously, fruit juices have water content. There's water in a lot of stuff that we consume that counts toward that ultimate goal of making sure that we're getting hydrated. So when you search for something, don't stop at that first page, like I'm showing at the top of this page here, that has the links and the summary. Keep going until you are satisfied, one, that the source is credible, and two, that you understand its context. So the first thing that you learn about water is there are many ways to introduce water, fluids, into your body, and just drinking basic water is only one of them. So that applies to everything. Now, again, I will issue this warning. I find myself getting irritated whenever I hear someone making claims that I know they haven't substantiated, and I become obnoxious. And I don't encourage that. It's not a good look. So don't be me. Don't do what I do. Just do what I say. Be careful, but for your own purposes and in the right moments, if you think you need to challenge a claim, just ask the questions. Tell me where you got that. I'd like to go learn more and get down into the details of that information. Otherwise, you will be walking around, we'll all be walking around believing things that are simply not true and making decisions based on that. And in some cases, living our lives based on information that is simply wrong. So be thoughtful, think critically.